Hi guys, welcome back to Eye of the Beholder, where we review 20 years of Dungeons & Dragons miniatures created by WOTC and WizKids from the inaugural Harbinger set of 2003 through Season Shore set of 2023. Today we soldier on with a review of Elemental minis, picking back up with the denizens from the plane of Earth. Dao are the elemental plane of Earth's version of genies. However, while Jinn are willing to work with humanoids, Dao would much rather enslave them. Hardworking and industrious, Dao can be found in great numbers across many other planes, including the prime material, looking to open up new markets or acquire more slaves. And while they can also grant wishes, they delight in subverting the intent of the wish while staying true to the wording. We get our only Dao mini, actually two minis, in 2017's Tomb of Annihilation set, with version A wielding a maul and version B casting a spell. With a lower body of translucent gray and an upper body clad in a red tunic and silver jewelry, I would use both miniatures interchangeably in an encounter, perhaps starting out with the Dao casting a spell, then later picking up the maul to finish off any survivors. Score: Paint 16, Pose 17, Playability 20, Pizzazz 16 for a score of 69. As mentioned in our last video, elementals are living manifestations of their elemental plane. In the case of the Earth Elemental, appearing as roughly humanoid creatures made of living rock. Extremely strong and hard to kill, Earth Elementals are homebodies, preferring their own plane, but can be summoned and commanded if the summoner is strong enough. Fun fact, Earth Elementals make excellent siege weapons, as they can reduce stonework to rubble in minutes. This Earth Elemental is technically, by number, the very first Elemental mini. From 2003's Harbinger set, we get a monochrome brown that, to me, looks more like mud than rock. The pose has it in full attack posture, striding forward toward the party, fist raised high to pound some hapless foe to jelly. Playability is okay for an early mini, but we have a lot of choices coming up. Score: Paint 10, Pose 15, Playability 13, Pizzazz 13 for a score of 51. A year later, we get this medium Earth Elemental in WotC's third set, 2004's Archfiends. I like the coloring on this one better, as well as the pebbling of the body. It looks way more rock-like than the Harbinger version. Pose-wise is basically the same, striding forward into battle with arms outstretched. I also like the facial detailing on this much better than the previous. If it were orange, it would make for a pretty good Ben Grimes mini. It's clobbering time. Score: Paint 13, Pose 15, Playability 14, Pizzazz 14 for a score of 56. Three Earth Elementals in 3 years, this run from 2005's Underdark set. Called a Loyal Earth Elemental, this mini perfectly exemplifies the vaguely human / rock-like book appearance. It's also the most aggressive looking by far, with boulder-like hands, spiky protrusions on the back and arms, and low to the ground ready to wreak havoc. I really like the aesthetic of this miniature. This is the one I'll choose to drop on the playmat. Score: Paint 14, Pose 20, Playability 24, Pizzazz 18 for a score of 76. You know, I never thought I'd paraphrase Brokeback Mountain in these videos, but WotC just can't quit Earth Elementals. For the fourth straight year, we get one in 2006's War Drums set. They called it an elemental wall, but it is what it is. This guy really does seem pretty wall-like though, with no discernible legs and arms raised in a ready position. It's also the most rock-like so far, gray in coloring and nicely detailed pebbling for the body as a whole. Score: Paint 16, Pose 12, Playability 13, Pizzazz 15 for a score of 56. After our 4 for 4 run, we don't get our next Earth Elemental until 9 years later in 2015's Elemental Evil set. Set on a medium base, this mini is true to the book art, grayish-brown body with a crown-like brow. Detailing is average at best. I prefer to see more of a pebbling texture on the body versus the muddish look on this guy. The facial detailing is a bit weak as well. Score: Paint 12, Pose 14, Playability 14, Pizzazz 11, for a score of 51. Meet the previous mini's bigger, scarier brother. From 2020's Fangs and Talons set, this guy looks pissed. Charging forward, arms raised, fists clenched, and mouth bellowing a challenge, this guy is ready to rock. And yes, I've been saving that pun until the last one. You're welcome. WizKids uses a dark wash effectively on this monochrome brown mini to really bring out the detailing of the body. I think we've saved the best for last. Score: Paint 20, Pose 23, Playability 25, Pizzazz 23, for a score of 91. Did you know rocks can fly? Meet the Earth Mephit from 2007's Night Below set. Mephits are annoying little bastards who delight in creating chaos. Not a lot to this mini. Uniform brown with little to no detailing, with only the brown wings setting it apart from appearing to be a small Earth elemental. Not a lot of playability either, as they are not common on the prime material plane and make for poor familiars due to their nasty disposition. Score: Paint 10, Pose 8, Playability 7, Pizzazz 5, for a score of 30. As mentioned in our previous video, Myrmidons are elementals who have been captured within magically created armor to serve as warriors to their masters. Completely losing their free will once donning the armor, they are terrible opponents on the battlefield, leaving crushed bodies in their wake. Our first Earth Myrmidon, called an Earth Archon Rumbler, comes from 2009's Monster Manual Legendary Evil set. Tan body, copper armor and hammer, and gray helmet complete the color palette. This mini looks bigger than it is, partially due to the hammer raised high above its head. And with the legs melded together, this mini gives the impression that it is gliding forward to attack along a stone floor. Score: Paint 18, Pose 20, Playability 20, Pizzazz 23, for a score of 81. We get our second Earth Elemental Myrmidon in 2023's Sand and Stone set. And if the last one looked big on its medium base, this one dwarfs it. Looking massive on its medium base, the brown of the body and maul are nicely offset by the shiny silver of the armor. I like how the helmet is actually welded to the armor, with the top of the Myrmidon's head poking out. Striding forward with purpose, this is a perfect mini, so I can't not give this a score of 100. Flail snails first appeared in the OG Fiend Folio in 1980. They can feed on anything, but particularly enjoy consuming crystal and mineral deposits. They make for perfect wandering monsters, as they generally do not have a lair as they move through the Underdark, leaving behind a slimy trail. Fun fact, a flail snail carcass is worth more than most treasure hoards, as the shell, body parts, and even the slime it leaves behind are used to create many magical items. We get our only flail snail mini in 2020's Fangs and Talons set, and it is absolutely brilliant. Right off the bat, the iridescent shell is an eye-catcher. Alternating between blues and oranges, WizKids gives it a pearl finish that gives it the shine it needs. The yellowish body with a bit of dark wash to bring out the details on the skin as it gradually turns to red in the flails is perfect as well. They even simulate the slime trail on the base. For the first time in these videos, we go back-to-back 100s. Galeb Dur are the mountains as treants are the forests, protecting and nurturing their chosen home. First appearing in 1983's Monster Manual 2, they are slow to move and slow to act, but extremely intelligent. They are territorial, but are willing to allow others to move through and even camp in their territory if they are respectful. Woe to those who are not, however, as Galeb Dur are powerful opponents in their own right and can also animate boulders to fight alongside them. We get our first Galeb Dur in 2008's Against the Giants set, and it looks exactly like it's supposed to. Brownish body with a dark wash to really emphasize the cragginess of the body, with eyes and mouth that are more elongated cracks in the surface than a definitive face. Solidly set on a medium base with fists clenched, this is a good first effort by WOTC. Score: Paint 15, Pose 15, Playability 15, Pizzazz 12 for a score of 57. WizKids takes their first swing at a Galeb Dur in 2017's Monster Manual 2 and frankly, misses. First off, they made this a rare, which makes no sense, but the same set also made a Grick a rare, so what do I know? Actually, what I know is this is smaller than the WOTC version, not as detailed as the WOTC version, and not as cool as the WOTC version. So score is Paint 10, Pose 11, Playability 7, Pizzazz 6, for a score of 34. Come on, WizKids, do better. And look at this, they did. We get a common Galeb Dur 6 years later in 2023's Sand and Stone set. The best of the three versions, this mini absolutely dominates the medium base it's set upon. Its dark brown body has a foreboding look to it, as it appears to be focused squarely upon someone or something. Pose has it in ready position, arms held loosely to the sides, legs braced, and body leaning slightly forward. Score: Paint 18, Pose 20, Playability 20, Pizzazz 17, for a score of 75. Gargoyles have been around for ages, from the medieval Middle Ages through the OG Monster Manual. Ferocious creatures who delight in inflicting pain, their favorite tactic is to either attack from a motionless state or to swoop silently down on a party. Fun fact, gargoyles will sometimes eat their prey even though they require no sustenance, just to hear them scream. We get our first gargoyle in WOTC's second set, 2003's Dragon Eye. First off, the mini is not crooked, it's made that way. The off-kilter pose gives the impression that the gargoyle is swooping in low to the ground, preparing to make an attack run on its prey. Paint is basically gray, with a bit of white on the fangs, while the pose is somewhat ill-defined, especially where the legs and tail basically merge together. Score: Paint 12, Pose 11, Playability 14, Pizzazz 12, for a score of 49. Three years later, WOTC tried again with this Earth Elemental Gargoyle in 2006's Blood War set. And it's better. I really like how WOTC posed this mini atop a stone column, crouching down with tail curled to the front. And while the paint lacks even the speck of white of the previous mini, the detailing is light years better. As a DM, I would want at least 4 of these to place at the corners of a building to keep the PCs guessing. Statues or death? Score: Paint 12, Pose 17, Playability 22, Pizzazz 15, for a score of 66. Third time's a charm, huh, WOTC? This gargoyle, from 2008's Dungeons of Dread set, is the tallest and most detailed to date. Paint-wise, WOTC throws in some random copper coloring, especially to the horns, to offset the monochrome gray. And while the pose is not particularly threatening, it is disconcerting. Check out that smile. This is what the Walmart greeter in hell looks like. Score: Paint 15, Pose 20, Playability 20, Pizzazz 21, for a score of 76. WizKids joins the Gargoyle Parade in their inaugural 2014 set, Tyranny of Dragons. Smaller and darker than the previous WOTC versions, WizKids does give us our one and only in-flight gargoyle by setting it on a clear stand. Outside of that, there's not much to recommend this one. Paint is a monochrome dark gray, pose is nothing special with poor detailing as well, and it's a rare to boot, so not particularly easy to get. Soft pass. Score: Paint 10, Pose 11, Playability 11, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 45. This large, four-armed aberration of a gargoyle was created by a Sirorak to defend his Tomb of Annihilation, so it makes sense that we'll get one in the miniature set of the same name. Released in 2017, this giant four-armed gargoyle is as advertised and will make quite the impact when you drop it on the playmat. Coloring is appropriately statuesque, with pose showing the creature reaching out with all four arms to grapple with its target. And despite the thin legs and small points of contact on the base, it's surprisingly sturdy. Score: Paint 14, Pose 23, Playability 18, Pizzazz 20, for a score of 75. Our final gargoyle comes from 2021's Snowbound set. Instead of a monochrome gray, we get monochrome brown. To me, the pose looks like it's been surprised by something, tilting away, head whipped around to the left, and arms up and claws out in a defensive position. The new coloring doesn't help much in the detail work, however. Other than the wings, it looks a bit unfinished. Score: Paint 10, Pose 13, Playability 15, Pizzazz 12, for a score of 50. Zorn are strange three-armed, three-legged, three-eyed elementals that just want to mind their business and eat rocks. They do have an affinity for rare gems and minerals, though, and have been known to negotiate with parties to obtain said delicacies. Be warned, however, they are not above attacking if their negotiations are not successful. We got our first Zorn in, logically enough, 2005's Underdark set. Pretty decent, with mottled browns for the body and white tipped claws on the three fingers and toes. To me, the central maw is a bit small, but WOTC did a nice job with the eyes. Note the wrinkles around the eyes and, well, I can't really call it his head, but it does look good. Score: Paint 13, Pose 15, Playability 15, Pizzazz 14, for a score of 57. Three years later, we get this Zorn Ravager Mini in 2008's Against the Giants set. Physically bigger than the previous Zorn, note how its toes hang off the base. What it loses in the monochromatic gray paint job, it more than makes up for in the large maw full of pointed teeth. As Zorn are known to sometimes coalesce into groups, perhaps a combination of the smaller Underdark with this larger Zorn would make for an interesting family encounter, although I have no idea how Zorns reproduce. Score: Paint 12, Pose 19, Playability 17, Pizzazz 17, for a score of 65. We get our final Zorn miniature in 2015's Rage of Demons set. This one has a pretty extensive paint palette: brown for the body, black for the claws, and a red maw surrounded by white teeth, but the most striking detail are its yellow eyes. Poses appropriately Zorn-like, with some nice pebbling on the body. Of our 3 Zorn miniatures, this one is the most detailed in paint and sculpt. Perhaps that's why it's a rare. Score: Paint 21, Pose 19, Playability 17, Pizzazz 20, for a score of 77. We are now led into another of the gray areas, in this case tinged in red, between elemental realms, where earth and fire merge to give us elementals that combine both to terrifying effect. The Magma Hurler are exactly what the name implies. A creature of molten rock whose preferred method of combat is to hurl molten rock at their enemies. They're capable of hitting targets up to 150 feet away. This mini, from 2006's War of the Dragon Queen set, looks more magma than rock to me, with a mostly translucent red body rising from flames at the base and continuing up the spine. The clawed hands are perfect for flinging, Pose catching the creature in mid-hurl. Is it just me, or does this guy look like he's a highlight player? Score: Paint 18, Pose 18, Playability 16, Pizzazz 22, for a score of 70. Behold the Magma Brute. Smarter than you'd expect, these guys delight in crushing their enemies before them. And while they can sustain themselves on a mineral diet, they enjoy the occasional unwary traveler. Well done. This mini, from 2008's Dungeons of Dread set, is exactly what it should be. Striding forward, both arms high above his head as it prepares to deliver a massive two-handed blow to an unfortunate foe. Paint is perfect as well, with a black-red perfectly simulating the cooling crust covering a red magma core. Score: Paint 19, Pose 23, Playability 18, Pizzazz 21, for a score of 81. Rockfire dreadnoughts are what you get when a fire elemental wanders from their natural habitat for too long. Basic brutes, but with a unique ability, they can form themselves into a giant ball of smoldering rock and just roll over their foes. This mini, from 2009's Monster Manual Savage Encounter set, nicely represents with a glossy black body, note the red eyes, and arms ending in translucent red fire fists with look amazing. Score: Paint 17, Pose 15, Playability 13, Pizzazz 20, for a score of 65. Our final pair of elemental miniatures is Magma Mephit from 2018's Monster Manual 3 set. Certainly a solid representation of these miserable little creatures, but not the greatest miniature to end our video on. Red body and wings with a yellow belly, eyes, and inside the ears are our colors. Poses more stand there and look tough, which frankly, Mephits really can't pull off. I do like the positioning of the wings though, so score is Paint 16, Pose 20, Playability 15, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 56. And with that, we are done with the Earth Elementals. Things will be heating up with the next video as we move on to the plane of fire. Thanks as always for taking the time to watch. Leave a comment if you please. I have the Beholder, signing off for now.